In Luke 12, Jesus says this, I have a baptism to undergo, and how distressed I am until it is completed. In the Hebrew culture, in the Jewish idiom, baptism was often used to refer to kind of an overwhelming sorrow or suffering. Baptism. And that's the way Jesus uses the word here. Can you be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? Can you drink the cup I drink? Jesus is saying, those who receive these positions of greatest honor in my kingdom are the ones who suffer and die with me. Jesus is saying the essence of kingdom greatness is to lay down your life in service to God, even if it causes suffering or your death. So let me ask you a question. Do you want to be great? Maybe not now, huh? But really, do you want to be great? Do you want to be perhaps great at your job or at your career? Would you like to be great at something like maybe be a great musician or a great actor, a great athlete? Would you like to be a great father or a great mother? Would you like to be great at something? I would. I do. I long to be great at some things. But that sort of gives me pause sometimes. Doesn't that seem odd? Doesn't it maybe seem not quite right? Doesn't it seem perhaps prideful or selfish to desire greatness, to have an ambition for greatness? Surely God frowns on somebody pursuing greatness for himself or herself. What I find really interesting, notice carefully that Jesus does not rebuke James and John for their ambition, their desire to be great. Instead, he does two things. First of all, he encourages them to pursue greatness. He encourages that attitude and that behavior. But more importantly, he corrects their misunderstanding about the nature of greatness in his kingdom. So he says it's okay to desire greatness and pursue it. We just have to be very careful to define greatness the way he does. Because in the world system, greatness is signified by being served. And you know this is true. For example, wealthy people, super wealthy people do not work. They have people work for them. Powerful people, they have servants who cater to their needs and desires. Important people do not perform menial tasks. For example, very important people do not take out their own garbage. They certainly don't go around collecting other people's garbage. They have less important people to do that kind of work. Really important people, they don't wash their own dishes. They certainly don't wash other people's dishes. They have unimportant servants to do those kinds of tasks. In the world system, greatness is signified by being served. But in the kingdom system, greatness is signified by serving others. Listen again to what Jesus says in verse 42. It says, Jesus called them together, his disciples. He called the disciples together and says, you know that those who are regarded as rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them. You know they do this. They lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Not so. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be the slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Now, I'm not sure about you, but sometimes that seems backwards to me. Does that seem backwards to you at all? I mean, is Jesus just really confused here? And really, there's only two options. Either Jesus is confused or we are. Either Jesus has these things backwards, or perhaps we do. Either Jesus is mistaken about what greatness is, or we are. And let's be honest. This is how we think. This is how we tend to think. The manager of the restaurant is a great person. She's a great person, the manager. But the guy who cleans up the tables after the customers leave is small. Not as important. We tend to think this way. We tend to think the mayor of the city is great, very important, but the guy who plows the snow off the streets is small. We go to the local co-op and we think, the CEO and the general manager of the co-op is great, but the guy who dumps the grain trucks at the elevator or cleans out the boot pit, small, unimportant. And we do tend to think this way, don't we? But here's the thing. When we think in this manner, it's an indication that we still don't get it. It's an indication that our paradigm is backwards. It's upside down. It's an indication that we are just not thinking like our Father yet. Because we are never more like Jesus than when we are serving other people. Now, perhaps you would object at this point and say, now hold on a minute, preacher. Wait a minute. If you ask me to take that kind of position, that low position, that servanthood place, well, people are going to take advantage of that. People are going to walk all over me. People are going to treat me like a doormat. What's your point? People will take advantage of you. People might walk all over you. They might treat you like a doormat. What is your point? Remember, Jesus said, whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. Slave. People take advantage of slaves. Slaves are often taken for granted. People walk all over slaves, treat them like doormats. And remember, that's how they treated our Lord himself. And are you greater than your master?